The fact is, our people are surrounded. They are beholden to this rebel group. And, this rebel group likes to do the power play, as that person has described, cause delays, etc. It's all part of a psychological game they're playing with our soldiers. The part where he says, let the people know. And that's exactly the problem that the SNF is having, isn't it? The communication with the public, with the family members, etc. It's been really a disaster for the past month. If they could get that right, it would go much better. Acknowledge what's going on, say what you're doing about the problem. You don't need to divulge details on sensitive talks, but at least let people know you do.
Guys, 2025 doesn't really seem good for South Africa. Everything just seems to be working against South Africa. It's really difficult to understand. And I really feel really, touched, especially for these soldiers that are stuck in the DRC. So I was watching I think it was a debate on what to do about the soldiers who are stuck in DRC, the South African Defense Forces. And I was really proud, with the force with Ronald Lamola, actually when he was saying that, a withdrawal of South Africa's defense forces is actually going to be worse than a surrender. And, I really enjoyed the power and the vigor. And I think it was almost decided, I don't know if it was concluded anyway, that more troops will be sent to really try to fight, especially these rebels. I think I even read today that there are over 100 different rebels, in the region, in the eastern DRC, in the northern and southern Kivu areas of DRC. And Ronald Lamola, and I think that this will be the position of the GNU now, where like they would send more, they should send more troops to protect, the military forces of the official military forces of the DRC, and help to really, in the vision of the African Union, to silence the guns on the continent. And so that was the perspective Ronald Lamola was coming from. And that South Africa was contributing to the vision of the African Union to really protect the continent and silence the guns. And so I was really happy, because I think last week there was a lot of rave in the internet and the media that, the 14, soldiers who had actually who had fallen as a result of the attack from the M23 group would be brought back to South Africa, only to stumble on news from yesterday, especially this report here from Central News. And actually, it's part of one of the reasons why I'm going to be playing this video between Toli in a newsroom and this, I think he's an advocate for the South African Defense Forces Union, something like that. But anyway, it was really a disaster, especially this evacuation. Here, the report says that the situation, while these soldiers had actually gotten ready for the evacuation, all right, they were already so positive and all that. They had packed their bags. The report says that they had packed their bags, and really were ready, only to meet the fact that the situation, it says that the situation took a grim turn last week when a planned evacuation of the injured soldiers faltered, all right? So there was supposed to be an evacuation now of the injured soldiers, all right? So it said on Friday morning, this will be Friday last week, it says that the troops were told to pack their bags and they were expecting to leave the DRC by Saturday here. Now, it now says that an air ambulance was prepared to fly the 5 most critically injured soldiers to Kigali, Rwanda, and then to the Waterkloof Air Force Base in Pretoria. So that was the plan, to fly them from Kigali to Waterkloof. And then there was also the Botswana Air Force, who was also ready to stand by to transport the other injured forces, South African Defense Forces, to be here. So then it said that by Friday evening, this was already supposed to have happened on Saturday, right? But by Friday evening, it says that the soldiers then received the devastating news, all right? And it says that the evacuation had been aborted, just like that, all right? It says that according to a rapport, this says that the report says that there was confusion over aircraft landing rights and also some logistical delays that actually dashed their hopes and their morale. The South African Defense Forces, their morale were in tatters. Now, this is the part that really touched me a lot. It says that one of the soldiers his leg was amputated above the knee and right leg below. It says that he's among those who are still stranded in the Eastern DRC. Another one is a young captain who has lost his eye and has limited vision in the other eye due to a shrapnel wound. All right. Now, it says that most of these injured people, soldiers from, I think this will be South African Defense Forces personnel, they actually suffer from shrapnel injuries, with infections looming as a threat due to poor hygiene conditions there. And several of the troops are also battling chronic diarrhea. So this is a really terrible state in which the South African Defense Force is actually stuck, you know, within the oppression by the M23 rebels. And even the more than 100 rebels in that region, that's the higher threat they are kind of like trapped within. Now, this is another part that actually also struck me. So it says that one of the soldiers, right, who is stationed at Goma Airport, it says that this despotent soldier was stationed at Goma Airport. Now, this is the report he had to say. He says, we are suffering as food and water are withheld from us as part of M23's power play. It says that tell the people and our families at home exactly what we are subjected to. Tell them the truth without all the lies about our circumstances. It then continues to say, it is time for our government to realize that we are the pawns in the diplomatic delays. We will not forget this. So this is the state in which the SANDF seems to be experiencing right now. Nobody really can understand and really for themselves, put themselves in their shoes to see, you know, feel the kind of like fear and anxiety they will be subjected to by these rebels. But you see, like you heard from the guy, he says that the M23 rebels have a certain power play. And part of it is to withhold food and water or something like that from the soldiers. And this is really surprising because I really don't know how the Nigerian defense forces would react in such a situation. Those ones are really, you know, sometimes, I don't want to use colloquial words, but I don't know how it would be to really hear these kinds of stories and probably not swing into action really quick to intervene. I don't know what could have happened, you know, especially with South Africa's Defense Force and the government, that makes it really difficult for them to really go and recover South African soldiers. And this speaks to the last video I made where Rob Hersov says that the army in South Africa is terribly weak and the South African police force is a joke. So I really felt really touched. And also listening to this interview I'm going to play soon now, you know, you could feel this advocate here really speaking to the kind of like facts about the entrapment that these South African defense soldiers face and the consequences that could have on their morale. And also the fact that one of these soldiers says that they will not forget this. I think that sounds like a cry of the heart of a soldier. And these things about war, when things break out like this, you know, war is something that is really devastating mentally, psychologically. And to the fact that they had their hopes dashed in the hope that they will be brought home back to South Africa and having all of that storytelling and all of that, bro. Just quickly listen to this interview with this advocate for the South African Defense Force. Really break down what's really going on with the soldiers trapped, South African soldiers trapped in the eastern part of the DRC, and share your thoughts. This is really bitter, but share your thoughts in the comments.
Let's get into another important conversation now as families bury members of the South African National Defence Force who lost their lives in Eastern DRC. The City Press news site is reporting that plans to return those who are wounded back home have stalled. According to the report, about 190 wounded and sick South African soldiers, of whom 2 are pregnant, were told on Friday that they would have to wait a bit longer before returning home South African National Defence Union Secretary, Advocate Piki Greef, joins us for more now. Advocate, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. What do you know as a union that organizes in this space? What do you know about the fate of this repatriation effort?
Good evening. Well, at this stage, what we do know is that talks are still underway for those, especially those who are wounded, to be returned to South Africa. There is a plane that's ready in Nairobi as we speak. And apparently all that is being waited for is word that those people have actually been moved from Goma to where the plane will pick them up, which is probably in Rwanda. And then hopefully they'll be coming back, and that'll happen pretty soon, within the next few days, hopefully.
Yeah, the understanding is that there are those who are critically wounded. How many are those versus the rest of the contingent that is wounded? Because I would imagine they too need urgent medical attention.
All I can tell you in that score is that the three of them are definitely very critically injured. In terms of the medical attention that they would need is something that if they don't get the necessary procedures done, they have the chance, of either losing limbs or even passing away. So there's at least three of them that are very critical. That'll definitely make it on that first flight. The rest of them are, wounded and scarred, and they need aftercare and so on. And then, of course, there's a third group of people who are returning due to a variety of reasons. You've mentioned two persons that are pregnant. Other persons can return for humanitarian reasons, such as, funerals, death in the family, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Are you able to confirm, Advocate, if there are those who are indeed pregnant within the South African contingent?
We haven't been able to confirm that as a fact, but I must add it's nothing unusual in the deployed force for female members to fall pregnant. It's not a thing that commonly happens, but it's not unusual.
Yeah. Let me take you back to some of what we have heard as, shall we call it, speculative reporting. And that is that the South African contingent in particular is surrounded in the DRC by the M23 rebels. And the understanding is that for any need they may have, they need to get the express permission of the rebels, whether it be food or water. I just want to read you some of what this report says is a message from one of the soldiers who are in the DRC, and I'd like your response at the end of it. I quote now, "Tell the people and our families at home exactly what we are subjected to. Tell them the truth, without all the lies about our circumstances. We are suffering as food and water are withheld from us as part of the M23's power play. It is time for our government to realize that we are the pawns in the diplomats' diplomatic delays. We will not forget this." Do you take that to heart? Is that something that you think indeed is a message that comes from the ground in the DRC as a direct result of frustration?
I think so. There's a lot of frustration in there, and I think a lot of the factual allegations that are made is correct, because I've received the same kinds of messages regarding food, water, control, etc. On my phone from different sources over there. But a lot of it, some of it is very much frustration, and some of it is just desperation, and obviously all of the time it's a combination of the two. I think the fact is, our people are surrounded. They are beholden to this rebel group. And, this rebel group likes to do the power play, as that person has described, cause delays, etc. It's all part of a psychological game they're playing with our soldiers, who are really actually pawns now. And it's also a very serious subject of negotiations that's going on. And I think one of the things that we might as well also clear up from that message is that, the part where he says, let the people know. And that's exactly the problem that the SNF is having, isn't it? The communication. with the public, with the family members, etc. It's been really a disaster for the past month. If they could get that right, it would go much better. Acknowledge what's going on, say what you're doing about the problem. You don't need to divulge details on sensitive talks, but at least let people know you're doing something.
Yeah.
Or make it more visible that you're actually doing something.
There are those, and I don't want to speak for the SANDF, but there are those who will say if and when you give too much detail, you may compromise the operation, or you may compromise the safety of those that remain there, because it now seems clear that a lot of negotiating is happening in the background in order for South Africa to bring home those who are injured. Otherwise, why would you have people who are injured? Because even in the Geneva Conventions, as we read, the understanding is that there are ways, or there are certain steps. If a soldier is injured, they cannot be prevented from being afforded medical care. So why is this not perhaps being communicated as such? Is it a fear of embarrassment, perhaps?
I think there's a bit of embarrassment involved there. I've no doubt, that the negotiation teams are saying that to the negotiators, the parties that they're negotiating with. And so one must be sensitive about those talks. One can understand that you don't want to, say something about that, or say something of what is being talked about and then compromise the outcome. So yes, it is very sensitive. But I've no doubt that the South African negotiators would have raised international law. South Africa has got a pretty good record on international law and its insistence on compliance with international law.
Yeah. As we taper down on this conversation, Advocate, when you read this article, it talks about the flight that will be bringing home, they call it the air ambulance evacuation. That will be a chartered plane, we understand, and it'll lift these soldiers, I think, from Kigali, if I'm not mistaken. And then the rest will be transported by Air Botswana, or the military of Botswana. Where are South African aircraft in all of this?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty clear over the past few weeks that there are no South African aircraft. There are no freight aircraft available in the South African Air Force anyway. So that's why planes have to be chartered, and that's how it's been for the past couple of years. It all speaks to the decline of the Defence Force. But that's all they can do now, is to charter planes with private contractors and from other militaries in SADC.
Yeah. Finally, there does appear to be some speculation about the fate of the semi-DRC contingent. When I say semi-DRC, I'm now including Tanzania, I'm including Malawi. These are the troop-sending countries. Are you hearing anything from your end about the fate of this mission? Is it to pull out, or is it to send reinforcements?
Well, look, so far what we've seen there is some form of reinforcement, not in the sense of, placing troops in the combat zone, but in strengthening one's numbers there. I won't go into the detail of that. But probably also part of the negotiation tactic, like a backdoor or a security chip that one has in your back pocket. I don't believe that there's any decision yet, and I don't think we're going to see a decision very soon. We're not hearing anything about being determined to withdraw, to end the mission. But at the same time, it's more of what the current situation is. It is what it is. Nobody's saying really anything about it. That's the problem.
Yeah.
We'll have to see how those talks, when SADC meets, turns out.
Advocate Biki Greef, thank you very much for your time.